Hello and welcome everybody to another episode of Books in Bytes. Today we're going to be diving deep into Mary Shelley's Frankenstein.
Oh, yeah.
Have you read it?
Absolutely one of my favorites.
And this book is so much more than just like a spooky Halloween story. It really grapples with some like timeless questions about ambition, responsibility, what it means to be human. And we're going to be exploring all of those themes today as we journey through the novel from beginning to end. I'm excited.
Yeah, it's going to be good.
Okay, so before we get into the nitty-gritty, let's give our listener a quick overview of what Frankenstein is all about. So Frankenstein tells the story of Victor Frankenstein. He is a brilliant but ambitious scientist who becomes obsessed with like unlocking the secrets of life.
Classic mad scientist trope.
Right, and he actually successfully creates a living being from various body parts. But instead of celebrating this like triumph,
right,
he's totally horrified by what he's brought into existence.
Yeah.
And abandons his creation.
Yeah, that's never good.
Yeah. And this act of abandonment has some pretty devastating consequences as the creature is left to fend for himself.
Right.
In a world that fears and rejects him.
Right.
And ultimately seeks revenge on his creator.
It's interesting because right from the start, Shelley sets the stage for this like tale of both physical and psychological exploration. The novel opens with letters from Robert Walton, who's this explorer venturing into the Arctic wastes.
Oh, yeah.
And his ambition really mirrors Victor's. And his isolation foreshadows the loneliness and despair that will eventually consume both Victor and his creation. It's actually Walton who first encounters the creature, describing him as this like gigantic stature guiding a sledge across the ice.
Oh, wow. I love that image. It's so powerful. And it immediately establishes this sense of like awe and dread. Right. And it makes you wonder, like, what is this creature's story? Why is he alone in this desolate landscape?
Yeah, for sure. And that's where the novel really gets interesting. We shift to Victor's narrative, and we learn about his childhood, his fascination with natural philosophy, and his growing obsession with pushing the boundaries of science. Shelley subtly hints at Victor's flaws early on, particularly his rejection of traditional scientific methods in favor of more obscure alchemical practices.
Oh, interesting.
Alchemy, for those unfamiliar, was this ancient tradition that focused on transforming matter, often with the goal of, like, achieving immortality or creating gold.
Oh, wow.
So this choice already suggests that Victor is willing to take risks and disregard conventional wisdom in his pursuit of knowledge.
Okay, so that disregard for boundaries ultimately leads him to that pivotal moment, the creation scene, which is probably like one of the most iconic scenes in literature.
Definitely.
You know, the stormy night, the dimly lit laboratory, the moment the creature opens his eyes.
Shelley's description is so vivid and unsettling. She writes, "I saw the dull yellow eye of the creature open. It breathed hard, and a convulsive motion agitated its limbs." And Victor, instead of feeling pride or accomplishment, is immediately overcome with horror and disgust.
Oh, no.
He flees his creation, abandoning it to an uncertain fate. This is where the novel's central themes of responsibility and the consequences of unchecked ambition really come to the forefront.
It's almost like a cautionary tale for us, isn't it? Like, sure, it's tempting to push the boundaries, to strive for like groundbreaking discoveries, but what about the ethical implications? What about the responsibility we have for the things we create?
Exactly. Victor's actions raise this crucial question: what obligations do we have to our creations, whether they be scientific breakthroughs, works of art, even our own children? Frankenstein suggests that simply bringing something into existence isn't enough. We have a responsibility to nurture and guide our creations, to consider their well-being and the potential consequences of our actions.
And in abandoning his creation, Victor sets in motion this tragic chain of events. The creature, alone and confused, embarks on a journey of self-discovery. And it's fascinating how Shelley portrays his development. He's not inherently evil, is he?
No, not at all.
He learns about language and emotions by observing a family, the de Lacys. And he develops this yearning for connection and acceptance.
That's what makes the creature such a compelling character. He's both monstrous and sympathetic. He's a product of Victor's hubris. But he also possesses this inherent desire for love and belonging. Remember that famous line where the creature pleads with Victor, "Make me happy and I shall again be virtuous."
Oh, yeah.
It's a heartbreaking moment, and it forces us to question whether the creature is truly a monster or simply a victim of circumstance.
It definitely challenges our preconceived notions of good and evil. The creature is capable of both great kindness and terrible violence, and his actions are directly shaped by how others treat him.
His attempt to connect with the de Lacy family is a perfect example. He hopes they'll see past his appearance and accept him for who he is, but they react with fear and rejection.
Oh, that's so sad.
This encounter shatters his hope for acceptance and fuels his rage against Victor, the one who brought him into this world of suffering.
And that rejection leads to those heartbreaking acts of revenge against Victor and his loved ones. The murder of William, Victor's younger brother, is particularly disturbing. But what's interesting is that even in his acts of revenge, the creature displays this twisted sense of justice. He targets those closest to Victor, mirroring the pain and loss Victor inflicted on him by abandoning him.
That's a great point. It highlights this complex relationship between creator and creation. The creature is, in a sense, both a reflection of Victor and a consequence of Victor's choices. They are bound together by this shared experience of isolation and suffering.
Their destinies seem intertwined from the very beginning, and as we continue our deep dive, we'll see how their paths continue to converge, leading to increasingly tragic consequences. But before we move on, I want to ask our listener, what stands out to you so far? What are your initial impressions of Victor and his creation? What themes or ideas resonate most strongly with you? We'll be back after a short break to continue our discussion.
Sounds good. You know, it's fascinating how Shelley uses the Arctic setting, not just as a backdrop, but as a reflection of the characters, like inner turmoil. Both Victor and the creature are drawn to these desolate, icy landscapes, mirroring their own feelings of like isolation and despair.
And it's in this unforgiving environment that Victor reluctantly agrees to the creature's desperate plea to create a companion, another being like himself. He's torn between his fear of the creature and a sense of obligation, wrestling with the ethical implications of bringing another such being into the world.
This is where Victor's internal conflict becomes even more pronounced. You know, he understands the creature's loneliness and his desire for connection, but he's also terrified of the potential consequences of creating another being with the same capacity for both good and evil. Like, what if this new creature turns out to be even more monstrous than the first?
It's a dilemma that speaks to our own anxieties about scientific progress, isn't it? We're constantly pushing the boundaries of knowledge. But what happens when those advancements have unintended consequences? Do we have the wisdom and the foresight to control what we create?
Frankenstein seems to suggest that we often don't. Victor, in his arrogance and ambition, fails to fully consider the potential ramifications of his actions. He's driven by this desire to unlock the secrets of life, but he neglects the responsibility that comes with such power.
And that lack of foresight leads to further tragedy. Victor begins work on the female creature, but plagued by doubts and nightmares. He ultimately destroys his creation before it's complete. He breaks his promise to the creature, fearing the potential for even greater destruction.
This decision seals Victor's fate. The creature, enraged by this betrayal, vows revenge, promising to be with Victor on his wedding night, chilling foreshadowing of the horrors to come.
Talk about a dark turn of events. You can really feel the tension building as the story progresses, and Shelley's use of language and imagery amplifies that sense of dread.
Absolutely. She masterfully blends elements of Romanticism and Gothic literature, creating this atmosphere of both beauty and terror. The descriptions of nature, for example, are often breathtaking, but they also evoke this sense of wildness and unpredictability, reflecting the chaotic forces at play in the story.
And then there's that pivotal moment, Victor's wedding night. The creature makes good on his promise, but instead of attacking Victor directly, he murders Elizabeth, Victor's beloved bride. It's a devastating blow, and it marks the culmination of Victor's suffering and the ultimate price he pays for his ambition.
The murder of Elizabeth is a turning point in the novel. It shatters any remaining hope for Victor's redemption and pushes him fully into the abyss of despair and vengeance. From this point forward, he's consumed by the single-minded desire to destroy the creature he brought into existence.
It's interesting how their roles seem to reverse at this point. The creature becomes the hunter, and Victor becomes the hunted. Their pursuit takes them across vast landscapes, from the Swiss Alps to the icy wilderness of the Arctic.
This relentless pursuit becomes a metaphor for Victor's descent into darkness. He's driven by rage and grief, and he's willing to sacrifice everything, his health, his sanity, his very humanity, to exact his revenge.
And in the end, both Victor and the creature find themselves stranded in the Arctic wasteland, mirroring the desolate landscape of their souls. Victor, consumed by his obsession, dies aboard Robert Walton's ship.
Victor's death, however, doesn't bring an end to the story. The creature appears one final time, expressing remorse for his actions and grief over the loss of his creator. He recognizes the futility of his existence, the pain he's caused, and he resolves to end his own life.
It's a poignant and ambiguous ending, leaving the reader to ponder the creature's fate and the lasting consequences of Victor's actions.
This open-ended conclusion is part of what makes Frankenstein such an enduring work. It raises more questions than it answers, prompting us to reflect on the nature of good and evil, the responsibility of creators, and the complexities of human ambition and desire.
Before we get into those larger questions, though, I want to touch on something we haven't explicitly addressed yet. Throughout the novel, we see this recurring theme of isolation. It affects almost every character, from Victor to the creature, to even those on the periphery like Robert Walton.
That's a keen observation. Shelley seems to suggest that isolation is both a cause and a consequence of suffering. Victor isolates himself in his pursuit of knowledge, cutting himself off from human connection. The creature is isolated by his very nature, rejected by a world that fears and misunderstands him. And this shared isolation fuels their destructive tendencies.
And it's not just physical isolation, is it? They're also emotionally isolated, unable to truly connect with others or find solace in their relationships.
Precisely. Even Victor's loving family and friends can't fully penetrate the wall he's built around himself, and the creature, despite his yearning for connection, remains fundamentally alone, forever marked by his monstrous appearance and the circumstances of his birth.
It's a reminder that even in a world filled with people, we can still experience profound loneliness, and that isolation can have a corrosive effect on our souls, distorting our perceptions and warping our sense of right and wrong.
Shelley's exploration of isolation adds another layer of complexity to this already rich and multifaceted novel. It prompts us to consider the importance of human connection, the need for empathy and understanding, and the dangers of isolating ourselves from others, both physically and emotionally.
But enough about isolation for now.
Mm-hmm.
We need to discuss something else that stood out to me, how the novel portrays the creature's capacity for learning and intellectual growth.
Right. This is one of the most compelling aspects of the creature's character. He's not simply a mindless monster. He's intelligent, observant, and capable of profound emotional depth.
Remember how he learns to read by observing the DeLacy family? He teaches himself language, history, even philosophy, all through observation and self-education.
It's a testament to the power of the human mind, even in a being that's been rejected and ostracized by society. And it raises questions about the nature of education, the role of experience in shaping our understanding of the world, and the inherent potential for growth and development that exists within each of us.
It also challenges our assumptions about what it means to be human, doesn't it? The creature, despite his monstrous appearance, displays many of the qualities we associate with humanity: intelligence, compassion, even a sense of morality.
And yet he's denied basic human rights and treated as an abomination. This stark contrast highlights the hypocrisy of society, the tendency to judge based on outward appearances rather than inner qualities.
And it makes you wonder, what if the creature had been given a chance? What if he had been nurtured and guided instead of abandoned and rejected?
It's a question that lingers long after you've finished reading Frankenstein. And it's a question that has implications for how we treat those who are different from us, those who don't conform to societal norms.
It's a reminder that we all have the capacity for both good and evil, and that our choices, our actions, and the way we treat others can have a profound impact on the world around us. But as we approach the end of our deep dive, I wonder, how can we connect all of this to Frankenstein's lasting impact and relevance in our own time? What can we learn from this 200-year-old story that can help us navigate the complexities of the modern world? You know, it's amazing to think that Frankenstein was written over 200 years ago, yet it still feels so relevant today. It's almost like Mary Shelley had this uncanny ability to tap into those timeless human fears and anxieties that we're still grappling with in the 21st century.
Yeah, it's true. And I think one of the reasons the novel continues to resonate is because it speaks to our anxieties about technology and the pace of scientific advancement. We live in an age of genetic engineering, artificial intelligence, all sorts of groundbreaking discoveries that have the potential to reshape our world. And Frankenstein serves as this cautionary tale, reminding us that we need to proceed with caution, considering not just the possibilities, but also the potential consequences of our actions.
Right. Victor was so focused on the thrill of discovery, the challenge of pushing scientific boundaries, that he didn't fully consider the ethical implications of creating life. He didn't think about what would happen after he achieved his goal. And that's something we see happening today, isn't it? We're so eager to embrace the latest technological advancements, but we don't always stop to think about the long-term consequences.
Exactly. Frankenstein forces us to ask those tough questions. What are the limits of scientific ambition? Do we have the right to play God? And what are our responsibilities to the things we create, whether they be artificial intelligence, genetically modified organisms, or even just new technologies that can be used for good or for evil?
And it's not just about technology, is it? The novel also speaks to this broader fear of the other, of anything that deviates from what we consider normal or acceptable. The creature is immediately rejected and ostracized because of his appearance, even though he possesses intelligence, compassion, and a desire for connection.
That's right. And this theme of otherness is something that's still incredibly relevant in our own time. We see it in the way we treat people who are different from us, whether it's based on race, religion, gender identity, sexual orientation, or even just physical appearance. Frankenstein reminds us that judging others based on superficial differences can have devastating consequences, not just for the individual, but for society as a whole.
It's like Shelley is saying that our fear of the unknown, our inability to embrace diversity, can lead us down a path of violence and destruction. And that's a lesson we need to remember, especially in a world that's becoming increasingly interconnected and diverse.
Absolutely. Frankenstein challenges us to move beyond superficial judgments and to recognize the inherent worth and dignity of every individual, regardless of their appearance or background. It's a call for empathy, understanding, and compassion in a world that often feels divided and polarized.
So we've talked about the novel's relevance to our anxieties about technology, our fear of the other. But there's another theme that I think is worth highlighting. Throughout the story, we see how the pursuit of knowledge can be both exhilarating and dangerous.
Yeah, Victor's thirst for knowledge is what drives him to make his groundbreaking discovery. But it's also what ultimately leads to his downfall. He becomes so obsessed with unlocking the secrets of life that he loses sight of his own humanity, neglecting his relationships, and ignoring the ethical implications of his actions.
It's a reminder that knowledge without wisdom, ambition without compassion, can be incredibly destructive. And it's something we need to be mindful of, especially in today's world where information is so readily available. And the pressure to achieve and succeed is so intense.
Frankenstein encourages us to cultivate not just our intellect, but also our emotional intelligence, our capacity for empathy, and our sense of ethical responsibility. It reminds us that true knowledge is not just about acquiring facts and information, but about understanding ourselves, our place in the world, and our responsibilities to each other.
It's really about finding that balance, isn't it? Between the pursuit of knowledge and the preservation of our humanity. Between our ambition to achieve great things and our responsibility to use our knowledge and power for good.
Exactly. And that's what makes Frankenstein such a timeless and thought-provoking novel. It doesn't offer easy answers or simple solutions, but it challenges us to grapple with these complex questions that are as relevant today as they were 2 centuries ago.
Well, dear listener, we've reached the end of our deep dive into Frankenstein. We've covered a lot of ground, from the novel's plot and characters to its enduring themes and relevance to the modern world. I hope this journey has been as insightful and engaging for you as it has been for us.
And as you go forth, I encourage you to revisit Frankenstein with fresh eyes. Consider its warnings, its insights, and its enduring message about the importance of responsibility, empathy, and the pursuit of knowledge with wisdom and compassion.
Thank you for joining us on this literary adventure. Until next time, happy reading.